Hi, everyone. Welcome to Crime Family. I'm your co host, Katie, and I'm here with my brother and sister, AJ and Lisa. And we have another case for you today. So, this is the case of Cindy James. And this one is, there's a lot to unpack here. There's a lot to go over. So, I'm going to dive in pretty quickly. This one happened in Richmond, British Columbia, which is like close to home because I lived there for a few years. Lisa lived in Richmond as well. And Lisa still lives in the Vancouver area. So, it's always just a little bit more like intriguing when you know the places they're like talking about and you can picture them in your mind because you've been there. So this is a little bit of background. This happened like years before we lived there. Before Lisa was even born. But anyway, let's just dive in. So this story takes place in Richmond, British Columbia, and it's just a normal day, just like any other day, I guess, in in Richmond. It's May 25th, 1989, and Cindy James's car sits quietly in the Blundell Center parking lot. So Blundell Center is like a shopping center, and there's groceries sitting in the back seat that are still unpacked, and her black purse is sitting in the seat as well. And there's a gift that's neatly wrapped sitting in the car as well. So everything looks normal, just like a car parked in this parking lot. But there is one thing that's a little bit concerning. There's a little bit of blood smeared on the driver's side door. Not a ton of blood that would make somebody concerned right away, but it's obviously somebody was bleeding in this car. Hours passed and there's no sign of Cindy, just her car sitting there. She had left home that morning and she just didn't come back. Friends tried calling her again and again, but there was no answer. It didn't feel just like an oversight in her plans because Cindy was planning on meeting friends at her home that evening and she just wasn't there. And so by that evening on May 25th, Cindy was officially reported missing. And the Vancouver Police Department launched a search right away. Officers walked the length of the shopping center. They were checking stores and speaking with people, asking if anyone had seen her after she left the grocery store. Um, there was nothing suspicious. Nothing stood out to anyone that would raise alarm bells. There was no sign of a struggle, and there was like no frantic witness accounts as if someone had been abducted or had been hurt. And there was really no witnesses that saw like a suspicious vehicle speeding out of the area, nothing like that. Just a normal day. There was just her car sitting there with the groceries and the gift and the blood in the car. So that's a little bit sketchy. There wasn't enough evidence at all to point in any direction either way. They don't know if Cindy left on her own, if there was foul play, if she had just, was running late, had left her car there and was somewhere else. It really was kind of up in the air. Multiple RCMP and Vancouver police units were brought in, and investigators began methodically retracing Cindy's day. So she was last seen leaving a grocery store and then walking to her vehicle, getting inside, and then driving away. And then she just vanished, and there was no sign of her until her car showed up in that parking lot. And like I said, witnesses reported there was nothing unusual or alarming. But Cindy wasn't just any missing person. This wasn't like her being missing was very random, but police were well aware of a long and painful history that Cindy was involved in. Um, she had gone through frightening harassment, there was violent incidences, there was anonymous phone calls, and there was years of documented fear written in her journals. And for about 7 years before she disappeared, kind of Cindy was clearly being stalked by somebody. And so police, when they first saw her car, she was missing, saw some of the stuff that was going on, um, they were a bit skeptical. They didn't know if it was self-harm, if she had disappeared herself, if she had went somewhere, left her life, or if there was something that was being staged to make it look like something had happened, or if there actually was foul play happening. So I'm gonna go dive into Cindy's background and history a little bit, just so you kind of understand where the police are coming from. Cindy James was actually born Cynthia Elizabeth Hack on June 12th, 1944 in Vancouver, and she was the eldest of 6 children. Her childhood was, by some reports, very strict. Um, she had a lot of anxiety and stress growing up. There's reports that say that her father was very like a disciplinarian, very, strict, and her mother was very quiet. She was loving, but she didn't really stand up for the family. Cindy learned very early to manage her feelings. She kind of internalized everything and kind of hiding her pain and just kind of suffered in silence inwardly. She was very smart and she excelled in school, but she kind of carried this quiet pressure with her, not expressing herself and holding everything in. Her family recalled that she had experienced disturbing nightmares as a child. She would often wake up screaming, and these nightmares actually reportedly continued into adulthood. So by her teenage years, Cindy had become very dependable. She was responsible, high achieving, and she was constantly aware of the needs around her. And this kind of led to her career as a pediatric nurse. She was very devoted and loved children. She was employed as a pediatric nurse at Vancouver General Hospital, and then she later managed a place called Blenheim House, which was a residential center for children who were facing emotional and behavioral challenges. So definitely like a stressful but probably very rewarding job. And her colleagues that worked with her at Blenheim House described her as very warm and attentive and someone who noticed like the subtleties in children's expressions or a parent's tone. And like I said before, they also noticed that she kept her private struggles hidden. And while she was very empathetic towards others, she was very guarded when it came to her own struggles. Before all of her troubles began, um, Cindy was actually very happy. In 1966, she married a man named Dr. Roy Makepeace, and he was a psychiatrist who was 18 years older than Cindy. In the beginning, the relationship was very warm and, filled with love and affection or whatever. But over the time, they kind of grew apart. They had differences in professional and emotional needs. Roy worked long hours and he became emotionally distant. And it's reported that frustrations after he failed his qualifying exams in British Columbia to so he couldn't work as a psychiatrist, that kind of put a strain on everything. He was, depressed and disappointed about this, and so he did work as, like, a director of health services at BC Hydro, but he wasn't doing, like, what he actually wanted to pursue, and so, the speculation that this definitely put a strain on their marriage. And Cindy did confide in friends that she felt overwhelmed at times and she was kind of unable to bridge this emotional gap between them. So after 16 years of marriage, Cindy and Roy separated in 1982. Even though they were separated, they like didn't cut each other off from their lives. They still kind of hung out, I guess. They would go to dinner together and they still attended events like the symphony together. Um and so for at least a time they were still involved in each other's lives as friends. And it was just months after their separation is when all of this stuff started happening to Cindy. So in October of 1982, this was 7 years before her disappearance, Cindy received her first prank call or mysterious call. A lot of these calls were just like silence and breathing, and sometimes there was whispering. And at one point, within 5 days, she had received 8 calls. And most of them are just nobody saying anything, just somebody breathing on the other end, which is, super unsettling. One call was a man saying, like, sexually suggestive comments, and another one was very blunt, and it just said, "You're dead." So, this harassment escalated pretty quickly. One evening as Cindy was closing the drapes for the night, the phone rang again, and the voice said, "Don't think pulling the drapes means I don't know you're in there." So it's like someone's literally watching her, and of course, Cindy freaks out, she calls the police, and they don't find anything, there's no footprints, they don't see anybody lurking around, there was, like, nobody that could be identified as being someone that was, standing around watching her. They advised her to keep a detailed logbook of phone calls and incidents that were happening, and to change her phone number. And so Cindy did do this.
What help is a logbook gonna do? It's not gonna protect that's not gonna protect her from this person.
Well,
I
yeah, and
mean,
I think maybe because at the time, like, this is way back in the '80s, they didn't have, like, a log, like a phone log that she could prove someone was calling her all this time. I don't know if they could look at phone records back then very easily, but I guess it was just, like, a personal thing, so she would actually maybe sort of have evidence of what was happening, like a trail. That's kind of where I think this was going, because it wasn't like a cell phone where you could see, like, all your missed calls or whatever. So
but
even though she changed.
I'm sure the phone provider could has a history of calls even back
Yeah.
then. But
Maybe. I
anyway,
guess this was just easier for police to be like, "Oh, record it yourself." So that's what she did. Um, and even though she changed her number, like, the phone calls still continued, and soon the stalker's presence moved from just being over the phone to actually physically at her home. So she started seeing figures at night in her yard. There was like silhouettes in the darkness. There was a rock that was thrown through her window one time, and items inside her home were actually disturbed. Someone had come into her house and slashed a pillow that was on her bed, and it was about this time that Vancouver Police Constable Patrick McBride entered her life, and he was the officer that was assigned to the case, and he responded to the call that night when someone had slashed her pillow. Throughout all of this, Cindy was still reaching out to Roy for comfort, even though they were separated, like I said. And so he was kind of comforting her when these calls would come in. He told her to get an answering machine so that she wouldn't have to answer the calls, and maybe they could get like a message or a voice recorded of this person that was calling her.
Wait, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Like, slashed her pillow, so they're saying, like, he actually got into her house?
Yeah. So there's reports that say there wasn't like, it wasn't forced entry, I guess. There are things like somebody, I don't know, some reports say somebody had a key or they got into her house and slashed her pillow that was in her bed. So yeah, there was somebody in there. And then there was no sign of anybody else afterwards.
Like, they just slashed pillow there was no, like, they slashed pillow and then they just left. There was nothing, no damage to the house or anything?
No, just that. So yeah, like very strange, but definitely unsettling. Um, and as I go through this, like there's a lot of like little differences in different sources of like with the timelines and like the dates and things that happened. So this is kind of just like what I pieced together, but there could be different variations. And just like slightly different ways that people are telling the story, but just trying to get the gist of it here. Just trying to show like the background of what was like happening with Cindy. So yeah, just backing up a little bit. Like I said, even though Roy and Cindy were separated, he was still involved in her life, and he came over that night that her pillow was slashed. And there's reports that he took the pillow with him when he left and threw it out. So there was really no possible way that they could get forensic evidence, even if they wanted to, on this pillow. Which is kind of like a
sketchy.
strange thing to do.
Why
Yeah,
couldn't she just throw it out?
it does seem really sketchy. Well, I think it's because he was leaving, and so he just took it with him to throw it out in some random garbage. I don't know. It wasn't just like in her garbage can. It was like he took it to throw it somewhere. Like why? Why? First of all, why would she let him? Why would she ask him to do this? And why would he do it? Um, Strange. um, so within days of this event, Cindy's downstairs neighbors called police one time after hearing a suspicious commotion inside Cindy's apartment. They knew that she had left for work and that there shouldn't be anybody in her apartment. And so they called police. And this, again, Officer Constable Pat McBride was the officer that responded. And him and Cindy became pretty close friends, like, really fast. He helped Cindy install deadbolts on her doors to try and help ease her mind, and they grew very close very quickly. And it was only 2 weeks into the investigation, Pat McBride, who was recently separated from his wife, moved in with Cindy. And it was just a temporary thing because he was saying that he had just separated from his wife and he needed somewhere to stay for about a month before his apartment that he was going to be renting was ready. And so Cindy offered a room in her apartment,
So professional.
Yeah, I mean, he was just gonna rent a room there. Um, seems like this happened very fast. It did happen very fast. It was like 2 weeks. And I think it helped ease her mind too that she would actually have, like, a literal police officer that was living in her house. So, kind of like a protection for her. So, it's like a win-win, and so he did move in with her into a separate room. But even though, like, a police officer was living under the same roof, the threats didn't stop. So, 3 weeks after Pat McBride moved in, Cindy found a note on her car windshield at work, and it was an like a classic note when you picture, like, a ransom note. It was, like, letters cut out of a magazine and pasted into words, and there was a photo picture or a magazine photo of a woman who kinda looked like Cindy, and her eyes were scratched out, and so this was obviously seemed like a threat, and now this person they know that they not only know where Cindy lives, but they know where her workplace is as well. And so police increased patrols around Cindy's house, and the threats continued anyway. On November 28th, Cindy discovered that her phone line had been cut into 5 pieces, but her neighbor's line remained intact. So it was just Cindy's line that was cut. And moments before discovering the line was cut, Cindy had received another one of those unsettling calls. So despite Pat living in her house and being around and the increased police patrols, officers never encountered anyone suspicious or lurking around her home. Like, they never saw anyone looking in her windows or creeping around her yard at all. But Pat did learn that another woman nearby was receiving strange hang up calls as well. And a man in the neighborhood claimed that he had seen someone creeping around Cindy's house multiple times, but he was never able to ever get a clear enough look at him to see who it was. So, I mean, these things could be related. They could be just, random other things happening to other people, but not really sure what's going on still. And so, just like he had planned, about a month later in December of 1982, Pat McBride moved out of Cindy's home. So now she was living alone again. So it really was just like this temporary thing that was going on.
Didn't seem to
Um,
help at all.
yeah, didn't do shit. But they still remained friends. So that same month, December of 1982, police noted something unusual. Roy, so Cindy's ex-husband, they saw his car circling around Cindy's block late one night, and they saw him turn into the laneway behind her house and switch off his headlights and just kind of sit there. And they confronted him, and he said he was just there to protect her. So I guess just watching her house. Um, Roy himself offered his own theories about what he thought was happening, and one of those theories was that Cindy may be being targeted by the mafia. And so he speculated that maybe one of the patient's families that Cindy worked with had criminal connections, and then he might be retaliating against Cindy. At Blenheim House, sometimes Cindy had to testify in court against families if there was like troubles going on in the family. So sometimes she had to go against parents, testify against them in court, and a lot of not a lot, but some parents had, like, troubled backgrounds of some of these patients that they had, and so it doesn't seem so coworkers, I guess, acknowledged that it could be maybe, like, a disgruntled parent or father that was retaliating, and maybe not too far of a stretch to think that, "Oh, they could have mafia ties." I mean, this was Vancouver, so anything is possible. But Roy's, like, involvement in all this bordered on intrusive sometimes. I mean, Cindy reported that one night he appeared at her window. He was, like, tapping on her window in the middle of the night unexpectedly. She didn't know he was coming, and she saw him out in her yard with, like, a knife and a shotgun, and he told her that he was just ready for whoever was out there. So, it seems a bit much. He's the one lurking around. Maybe he's the one that people have seen, like, in the shadows. And so he was, claimed that he's just trying to protect her, and he urged her to move back in with him, and he became angry when she refused. So it kind of seems like he is maybe, more obsessed with her than she is for him. There's some reports that he, was still in love with her and she's the one that left him, and so he still has these feelings, trying to protect her, maybe going over the top a bit. If what if this is all true, the situation about him being outside, just kind of guarding her house. So all the while, all this is happening, the calls still aren't stopping. And so in January of 1983, when Pat McBride is over visiting Cindy, one of those strange calls comes through, and this time he's actually able to listen to it himself. Can't really tell what's going on. It's like mostly quiet, but it kind of sounds like a woman's voice echoing over like a public address system, kind of like at an airport. And police had installed a wiretap on Cindy's phone, but this person that made the call never stayed on the line long enough for them to be able to trace the calls. One time they kind of were able to trace a call a little bit, and it came back to somewhere in the Richmond area, which is where the Vancouver airport is, but that's kind of as close as they could ever get to a location. So still nothing definitive. There's no concrete evidence of like where or who this person is. So January 27th of 1983, Cindy was at home and she, I guess, she said she was just trying to distract herself by moving some old boxes into the garage. She was waiting for her friend Agnes to come over for the night because I guess Cindy had expressed that she was more anxious than usual, and Agnes had agreed to come over and stay to just kind of calm her nerves that night. So Agnes shows up at Cindy's home at around 9:30 p.m., but Cindy wasn't waiting inside for her, and it just felt very strange. The whole house was completely quiet. And then Agnes heard low moaning coming from outside, I guess, kind of like the basement stairwell. And she followed it to the basement, and there at the bottom of the stairs, she found Cindy crumpled up on the floor, and she had a black nylon stocking wrapped around her neck, and her arms and legs were slashed, and Cindy was barely conscious. So Cindy told police later that she had gone into the garage and the light wasn't working, so she was just kind of standing there in the dark, and then a man suddenly appeared and approached her with a knife, and he told her that he would slash her face if she made a noise. And then she said she felt like a needle prick in her arm, and then very quickly everything kind of became heavy and she became weak and drowsy. And she said that the man tied a nylon stocking around her neck, cut her all up, and told her it will take a long time to die before he left. So this is like super scary, super unsettling. I'd be terrified. There's no evidence at all. There's no fingerprints, no footprints, no DNA in or around this area of anyone other than Cindy. And so when she's at the hospital, the doctors counted 14 cuts on her back, arms, and shoulders and legs. Her neck clearly showed strangulation marks. So this nylon was very tightly wrapped around her neck, and her face was all bruised. And they actually did find a puncture mark on her right arm. So it looked like there had been a needle that was poked into her arm. But when questioned, Cindy couldn't recall very many details. All she could say that her attacker wore gloves and sneakers. And police immediately suspected Roy. So this was her ex-husband. But he had an alibi that night. He said he was working late and then he went out to dinner. And like I said, there was no evidence of anyone, no evidence of Roy. So he was never charged with anything. So around the same
But wouldn't
time,
she have wouldn't she have like recognized Roy's voice if it was him?
I mean, yeah, unless he was disguising his voice. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess you can disguise your voice, but like,
that's a
I don't
good
know.
point. I don't
She
think
never said
she
anything about or even like the police officer that moved in with her for a short time, like, because I was also suspicious of him, but she would know their voices. So obviously they either disguised it or it's a random person, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it comes up later that Cindy eventually does think that Roy is responsible for these attacks and phone calls. That's what she says, but I don't know about this particular one. She doesn't I don't know if she points the finger at him directly right now. Anyway, but eventually she kind of does. So around this time, Cindy moves into another home nearby in the Vancouver area. And of course, there's speculation that she's trying to escape whoever is tormenting her. Maybe they don't know she moved and can't find her. And she also began seeing a doctor who prescribes her anti-anxiety and sleeping medication because Cindy had confided in them that she didn't think she would ever feel safe again. So obviously she was always anxious. Her nerves were always on edge because of what was happening to her, which I don't blame her. I'd be terrified too. Just those phone calls alone would be enough to put me over the edge, I think. And even at the new home, the harassment followed her. There were more letters had arrived at her workplace, those cut and paste magazine letters, there was threatening messages, and once again the phone lines at this residence had been cut. Then in October of 1983, Cindy found a dead cat in her yard that had been strangled, and there was a note attached to it that said, "You're next." So this is getting out of hand. Like, keep the animals out of it. Why do you gotta go strangle a cat to send a message? Like, get a life.
Serial killer behavior, killing animals.
Yeah, definitely. Like, no regard for anything, especially innocent animals. That's the worst kind of person. So they are thinking, like, every time something happens, they go to Roy and like question him. They like heavy suspect Roy. And like I said, Cindy also kind of names him in some of these attacks that she thinks it might be him as well.
But, like, why would he do that? Too scared enough to move for him to move back in for her to move back in with him or something?
Yeah, I
Like, is
think
that the motive they're thinking of?
I don't know. Like police, I think eventually kind of move away from him, but yeah, I didn't see anything that like described like why Roy would be the one doing this. Maybe to get back at her. Yeah, maybe to scare her enough for her to come back to him. I don't know. And there's people are saying throughout this, like, why keep tormenting her? Like, if you wanted her dead, like, you had multiple chances. Like, why are you just like fucking around? So it just seems like, yeah, someone is definitely just trying to like make her go crazy.
Also, the timeline is suspicious because you said it happened right after the divorce, right? Like a month after they got
Yeah, that's
divorced.
when it
So
all started.
that was like a red flag for me. Like, well, that's weird. Um, but I guess it still doesn't know like the motive. Like, yeah, like you said, if he wanted to kill her, he could have just done that. And you said it was still amicable, right? Like they were still in each other's lives after. Because I was thinking like, oh, maybe he wants to still be in her life in some sick way, but he was in her
Yeah, like
life.
in the beginning, yeah, like she would still call him. He would come over and comfort her, and they would still like go out to dinner and things. So they were
So
still
so
friends.
why'd they get divorced again?
Um, I think it was I think Cindy was the one that wanted the separation. I think it was just because they just kind of had drifted apart. Like their interests were different. He worked a lot. She kind of needed more connection and involvement in his life than he was giving. Um, Things like that. He was also 18 years older, so I think maybe just their lifestyles were just kind of changing at different paces. And so, like I said, the police were never able to get any evidence off any of the items that Cindy found in her home, like none of the notes. The notes that she got from work, she mostly just threw away right away. She'd rip them up, throw them away. Sometimes they would come in envelopes and she just wouldn't even open them. And so the police were never able to get evidence off of these things that she threw away. Even the notes that were at her home, um, never any fingerprints, DNA. The cat that was found, there's nothing ever found on that poor kitty cat. Never any evidence, like, in her home of strange DNA. So, who's ever doing this is, like, either super lucky or super meticulous and, like, knows what they're doing. But because of this, it just felt to Cindy that the police really weren't taking it seriously because they couldn't find any suspects. They couldn't move anything. They couldn't move the investigation forward because they had nothing to go on. And so Cindy was kind of resenting the fact that she felt they weren't doing anything or taking it seriously. So in November, Cindy hired a private investigator named Ozzy Caban. And this private investigator installed a portable phone in Cindy's house. And he gave her a two-way radio with a panic button so that if her phone lines were cut again, she still had this radio where she could reach out to him or the security office for help. And her coworkers were, of course, growing increasingly worried. The phone calls kept coming. She was getting phone calls at work at the same time, and it seemed like the fear and harassment was just relentless. And of course, the physical attacks continued as well. So now we're into January of 1984, and Ozzy came over. So Ozzy, the private investigator, came over to Cindy's house one evening because he was hearing a strange rustling sound over the two-way radio. He wasn't hearing a voice, but just, like, kind of like a commotion, and so he goes over to respond to, Cindy, and he found her on the kitchen floor. She was barely conscious, and a knife had been stabbed straight through her hand, and pinned to that knife was a note that read, "Now you must die." And again, she also had a black nylon tied so tightly around her neck that first responders couldn't even see it. It was like kind of like her neck was just like so, it was like all like her skin of the neck was like around it because it was so tight. But she had not been strangled. Of course, Cindy survived. And again, there was no signs of a forced entry, and Cindy later explained that she had opened her back door to let her dog in, and she saw a man coming up her walkway, and she at first thought it was one of her neighbors, and she tried to talk to him, but as he got close, she of course realized it wasn't him, but it was too late, and he got close enough to her that he struck her on the back of the head. She says that from this incident, she remembers that there was actually two men being in her home. She couldn't get a good description of both of them, but after they left, that's when she crawled to the radio and she tried to reach Ozzy. She kind of got a little bit of description of one of the men. She said he had a brown mustache, blue eyes, and a blue nylon jacket. This is what she told Ozzy, the description of this man, but she refused to tell police about this because she said the men had threatened to hurt her sisters if she said anything to police. So even though Ozzy encouraged her to give police this information, she actually never did. And police after this questioned Roy again intensely, and of course he denied everything. And he brought up the mafia angle once more, but like there was no evidence either way. And so again, no charges ever came down on Roy.
But again, she would know. She would have recognized Roy if it was Roy.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
so
exactly.
obviously
So
it
she knows
wasn't.
one of them wasn't him for sure. I don't know if she got a good look
I
at
Yeah.
feel
the other guy, but yeah.
and I feel like if it was the mafia, they would just kill her right away.
I know.
I
Yeah,
think
I don't think the
at
mafia,
some
like, plays
point
games like that. I
no.
don't know for
Unless
sure.
like, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, unless Roy, like, you could still be involved and not be the person doing it. Like maybe he hired people or whatever. I don't know, but
Yeah, that's true.
weird.
It could still be him, like, yeah, or orchestrating the whole thing for some reason. Um, yeah,
It
very
just
mysterious.
seems weird that it seems weird that this stuff happens when there is no surveillance, you know? Like,
They have people
it just
watching her
seems
home, like,
yeah, and have this happen, they know when it's not being watched. Yeah.
yeah, that comes up later where it's like, things only happened when, like, the police happen to, like, call off the surveillance or, something happens with the security cameras, and that's when something happens, so it seems very fishy, but also either someone's super lucky, super good, and they, like, know what's going on, they have, like, inside details, or, yeah, something else is going
I
on
mean, I
here.
I think that guy moved in with her for a couple months. He's in the police department. He would know. I don't know. I'm suspicious of that guy.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, at this point, I mean, can't really rule anybody out because there's no evidence either way. So after this attack, Cindy and Ozzy kind of create a check-in system. Cindy would radio or call him or the office whenever she went somewhere, and then she would check in again when she returned so that they knew where she was going and when she was going to be back. So that they could, monitor her safety, make sure that she was back when she said she was going to be. And Ozzy and his security team also did regular routine checks around her home. So like I said, there's people constantly watching her, she's constantly checking in, but somehow these things are happening when no one's watching. So on July 23rd, 1984, Cindy does the usual check-in. She said that she was going to go for a walk with her dog and that she should be back home in about an hour. But she doesn't check back in. And during this walk, she says a man in a green van pulled up beside her, and there was a woman sitting in the passenger seat, and the man had asked her for directions. And Cindy says she remembers that she started to give him directions, and then everything just goes black. And then 3 hours later, Cindy is found trying to get into a neighbor's house, and she has a bloody nose, she has twigs and debris that are all tangled in her clothes. There's a fresh needle mark on her arm, and again, there's a black nylon tied around her neck. And Of course, police are called, and investigators really don't find anything. I mean, they find one of her shoes at the scene, and they do say that they find drag marks along the grass near the sidewalk. And
Like, she was trying to get into her neighbor's house, not her
yeah,
own?
yeah, I think it was just like I don't know if it was like her next door neighbor or anything, but it was like somebody in the neighborhood's house. I think she was just like calling for help. That's I think that's when she like her memory came back, which is her trying to get into someone's house. So probably just like frantically just trying to get somewhere. Of course, she's taken to hospital, and while she's in the hospital, there's reports of a man calling the front desk asking unsettling questions, and he's asking, whether the hospital has security. He's asking how many floors it has, and he asks what time the emergency department closed. And the emergency departments don't usually close, but staff refused to give him any information, and he hung up before they could identify who this was. Nothing ever came of this call. They don't know who it was, why someone was calling, if it was even related to Cindy, if it happened to be a coincidence. Just another mysterious phone call that nobody could ever find evidence of who it was, where they were coming from, what they wanted. So Cindy was able to describe her attacker this time again, and it was different from the original attacker in her home. This man had a long beard, and she said he had horn-rimmed glasses. And again, he was never identified. His van was never identified. The woman in the van
So
was never
so they
identified.
never so they never did, like, composite sketches of anybody ever in life?
There is, like, a composite sketch of one of these people. I mean, I can probably pull it up if you wanna see it.
It also seems like it's every time it's a different person, like, it's a whole team out together or something. It's so strange.
Yeah, and that's one of the things as a police like, raise some flags for police. They're saying, like, every time she describes a person, it's different. It's not, like, the same person attacking her. It's, like, so she either is seeing things wrong or, yeah, it's, like, a whole team of random people that are attacking her, someone different every time, which doesn't seem likely either. So, yeah, police
Unless it
start
is like the mafia. It's like different a different
Yeah, I mean, that's a
family, a mafia
possibility.
family, just
It's just
take
like,
turns.
why drag it on for years, you know? It's very strange.
I know, it is.
And obviously these people are or this person is, like, drugging her. Like, is that why she has the needle marks, like, where she can't remember things, and that's why her memory is foggy every time?
Yeah, I think that's the assumption is that someone is pricking her with a needle every time, um, and that's why she blacks out and she can't remember anything. And she always has a black nylon around her neck, right? So it's obviously somebody there a group of people involved in the same thing.
Do you know if they ever, like, fi they did, like, a talk screen or whatever and find out what was injected in her? Like, did
They
they ever
yeah, they
find that out?
do do a talk screen, but, like, she's also taking, like, anti-anxiety and, like, sleeping pills, so all this stuff mixed together, they find, like, a lot of diazepams in her system. It could be just a mixture of what she's taking plus what other people are giving her, just like a concoction of things. So, it's hard to get, like, a real answer for that. Something that's gonna make her pass out really quickly, though, apparently. So, of course, Cindy is becoming frustrated and exhausted, and she's kind of losing hope in the police response because, like I said, every time she says anything, describes people, they never come up with a viable suspect. And the emotional toll is really starting to show physically on Cindy. She has dark circles under her eyes, and she has lost a lot of weight. She just looks very, like, frail. And in 1986, in April, Cindy moves again, and this time she moves out of the core of Vancouver and into Richmond, which is just like a like a suburb city outside of Vancouver. People are thinking she moved to try and just like outrun or get away from who's ever tormenting her. Like maybe she moves out of the city, they won't be able to find her. And Cindy also has a home alarm system installed in this home, but neighbors say that it constantly goes off. Sometimes it would go off once a day, sometimes once a week. And her neighbors, every time it would go off, they would come outside, check on her. But eventually, because it was happening all the time, people kind of stopped checking in just because it was like a thing that was always happening. One neighbor remembered an officer speaking to Cindy after responding to one of these alarms. And they described the policewoman kind of as dismissive, as though Cindy was an inconvenience. It was like this was happening all the time. They were showing up all the time. And so it was kind of like an annoyance to the police that here they were again because of this alarm that kept going off for no reason. They never found anybody, nobody lurking around, nobody strange, like no signs of anyone trying to get in. And it was just like, what the fuck, here we are again, kind of thing. And then on April 16th, 1986, Cindy's close friend Agnes and Tom, they decide to stay the night at Cindy's after kind of a night of playing cards and just chatting. In the middle of the night, they wake up because they hear a strange noise in her house and they discover that Cindy's house was on fire. So the fire had started in the basement, and when Agnes went to call 911, they found that her phone line had been cut again. And investigators found evidence of an accelerant inside the home, and so and there was no sign that it was accidental, like, there was no, like, electrical, um, nothing that had malfunctioned to start a fire. It was clearly deliberate. And this is when Cindy kind of believes or thinks that Roy's involved, and she kinda points the finger at him, but again, 0 evidence of Roy, 0 evidence of anybody else.
Because it'd
And
be like Roy would be, like, one of the only people that knows where she moved to. I'm just guessing she told him, even if they're friends or whatever. So, like, yeah, it definitely makes it seem like
But if she's thinking it's him, I doubt she would have told him where she's moving to.
yeah, that's true.
So probably by this point, she stopped telling him.
Yeah.
well,
Yeah,
yeah, that was,
maybe.
like, the next thing I was gonna talk about was, like, it was around this time, after this fire in June of 1986 was when Cindy kind of, like, cut off their friendship. They didn't have any more communication, they weren't hanging out, and she was just kinda done with him for good because whether she thought it was him doing these attacks before, she thought it was him that had started this fire, and so that was kind of the last straw for her, like, "We're not friends. You set my house on fire, we're done," kind of thing. Um, this so Cindy th in June of 1986, Cindy finally files for divorce, so, like, they're not actually divorced, they've just been separated, and now it's kind of like, yeah, now we're actually divorced, and she changed her last name. So while she was married, her last name was Makepeace because that was his last name, and she changed her last name. She didn't go back to her maiden name, which was Hack. She changed it to James, and so now she's Cindy James. After this, she took 6 months of sick leave from her job. During this time, she went to Germany to stay with her brother for a little bit, and it was kind of like a refresh for Cindy. She had a new name, um, she had time to relax in Germany without the constant threat of a stalker because obviously this stalker did not follow her to Germany. And so she was able to relax a little bit, had some time off work, and yeah, kind of like a rest and a respite from what she was going through. So after that 6-month sick leave, she decides to return back to work. But she got some devastating news once she went back to Blenheim House because she was told to resign when she got back. They felt that her ongoing ordeal, the mental strain, everything she was going through was affecting her performance at work, and she just couldn't keep up with the demand of the job anymore. And so they gave her a large severance, and that was it. They did help her kind of get her credentials back so she could be a nurse, and she did get a job at the hospital again as a nurse. And with this new job, of course, this resulted in her having to return back to shift work. And of course, that even for someone that doesn't have anxiety and sleeping issues, this affects like your sleeping pattern, I'm sure. And so this affected her sleeping even more, and it got increasingly more difficult for her to sleep. And so the reliance on her medication increased. She began seeing a psychiatrist who encouraged her to keep a journal of her experiences, her emotions, her thoughts, what was happening. And in that journal, Cindy expressed how exhausted she just was from living in fear. She expressed how angry she felt towards all the people in her life that she felt had failed her. She was angry at her parents for her childhood and her upbringing. She was angry at Roy for everything he had put her through and for, of course, her thinking that he was involved in all of this. And she was angry at the police because she felt they weren't doing anything to help her. And so she was just kind of in a very bad place in her life, obviously, and just nothing in her life was going the way she needed it to go. Even Roy felt the strain of everything that was going on. In October of 1988, he experienced strange incidents at his door. There's people knocking on his door, trying to get in, and he started receiving weird phone calls and getting chilling voicemails. One of these voicemails is actually, you can still hear it. It's available online. Melanie Hack, who is Cindy's sister, has a website kind of dedicated to Cindy, and she has his voicemail online, and I'll send you guys the link to listen to it.
Terrifying. I think I've heard it.
It's very short. Yeah, it's like the most terrifying thing I've ever heard.
It is scary. I had to sleep with the lights on all night when I heard it.
Oh God.
Okay,
What the hell?
thoughts on this? Yeah.
What is it? I didn't even know what it's saying. What is? Let me. I'll
I
let
can't
you hear
listen
it
to it
again.
again, actually. It's terrifying.
Here, okay, we'll play it again for everybody as well. So they figure out that it's actually saying Cindy, dead meat soon. Creepy, the creepiest like voice ever. Like, yeah, definitely like nightmare material.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, and this came onto Roy's voicemail, and he, kind of had the wherewithal to like, keep this, and he actually submitted these voicemail tapes in court later, which I'll get into. But yeah, so clearly something's going on. It's like now people are reaching out to people in Cindy's lives and harassing them as well. So it's like, what the fuck is happening? So when you listen to that, like, who, I don't know. To me, Roy thinks that this is the person that's been stalking Cindy, obviously, like the guy that's been attacking her. To me, it totally sounds like a woman. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I always just thought it was a woman
Yeah, right
when
off
I
the
listened
bat, I'm
to
like,
it.
that's a woman.
Yeah,
Really?
totally.
Oh, you didn't
I
get
never.
that?
No. I mean, it just sounds like someone disguising their voice, so it could be man or woman. I don't know.
Oh, okay. I instantly thought it was a woman, but yeah, there's different
Yeah, so did
Weird.
opinions
I.
about
Yeah.
that. Yeah, okay. I'm glad I'm not the only one.
It's terrifying.
It is. Can you imagine getting that on your voicemail? Like, God.
It
Even
is
that one
absolutely
incident
terrifying.
alone would be enough for me to be like anxious and not be able to function properly. I can't imagine
Oh,
going
yeah.
through everything that she's going through and still like
Yeah.
being able to,
Yeah.
go through life.
I just
Obviously
I go
she's
to gy
struggling, right? She's taking medication, she
Yeah.
can't sleep, she's lost her job. Like, yeah, things
Oh,
are
God.
going downhill fast.
Yeah.
So, kind of continuing on here with Cindy's ordeal, later in October, as Cindy was returning home from work, she was attacked in the garage by two men in ski masks and a knife. Again, she was injected with something and threatened to be killed as she tried to fight them off. It took a couple hours for whatever reason, it took a couple hours for the silent alarm to register at the security office. And when someone finally did show up, they found Cindy unconscious in the front seat of her car, kind of like her legs were out the side of the car, and she was sitting in the front seat, or the driver's side. Her hands had been tied behind her back, and there was a black nylon also tied around her neck. Her nose was bloody, and she had duct tape around her mouth. Cindy, of course, was rushed to the hospital. She was placed in the ICU. She was in bad shape, and she actually fell into a coma that night. Police investigated, and this time they found 4 cigarette butts around Cindy's, I'm not sure if it was her car or just like around her house. And they also found a tissue with a small amount of blood on it around in the same area. So they have found some things, but they can't for sure link it to, oh, this was someone that had attacked Cindy. So I guess it might have just been like outside her house, maybe around the neighborhood. They found these cigarette butts. So again, they just still can't point to anybody, whether there's DNA on them or not. They don't know. I couldn't find any evidence of saying, yeah, this is whose cigarettes these were. Um, Either way, they can't link them to Cindy's attacks. Throughout all of this, there's a pattern that has emerged that police are becoming aware of. They notice that the phone calls and letters are what start off this cycle as kind of like a warning. And then after receiving these, that's when the attacks happen. And then there would be like a short break where nothing would happen. She would kind of get a reprieve. And then the phone calls and letters would start again, and then another attack. And this was kind of like the cycle that had been happening throughout the years. And Cindy's family believed that her stalker was trying to torment her rather than kill her because, like we said, they had multiple chances to do so, even though it kind of seems like they have tried to kill her by strangling her so tight, but they never actually, make sure that she's dead before leaving. And so it is kind of like just like a tormented, kind of like torturing her this whole time. In April of 1989, Richmond police install surveillance equipment at Cindy's house so that they can monitor it 24/7. So they don't have somebody out there all the time, but they can watch the feeds. They can go back and see what's going on 24 hours a day. And so they are confident that they are finally going to catch somebody in the act, whether it be somebody lurking around her house, someone trying to break in, someone attacking her. And I mean, it took like 7 years for them to install these kind of things, but that's where they are in this investigation. So now we're at May 25th of 1989. And Cindy has made plans with her friends Agnes and Tom to play bridge or play cards or something at her house. But when her friends show up that night, Cindy's not there. Her car's not there. And so they get kind of worried and they drive around to see maybe if they could spot her car in the neighborhood or around town. And they actually do find her car sitting in the parking lot at the Blundell Center parking lot. It was dark, it was past 9 PM, but they do recognize her car and they pull into the parking lot beside it. But Cindy is not there, the car's locked, and the keys are sitting on the front seat, and they see a small amount of blood on the driver's side door. And so this brings us back to the beginning of this episode when I was talking about how Cindy had disappeared. This is now where we are. Again, the police question Roy, and he provided an alibi. And when they told Roy that she was missing, Roy said, "Oh my God, she's dead." I'm not sure how he knew that or why he thought that, but that's just where his mind automatically went. They had sniffer dogs that were called out to search the Richmond area, but the dogs were unable to sniff their way to her. They couldn't find her. The car was forensically analyzed, of course, but only Cindy's fingerprints were found in the car. Nobody else's. And the blood that they found inside the car matched Cindy's blood type. Don't know if they could do more further DNA on that, but it did match Cindy's blood type at least. Cindy's father from Vancouver Island came down to Richmond to stay in her house and help out with the search. He offered the police military manpower to help search, but they declined as they felt that they had the search under control. There was no evidence that Cindy had left on her own free will. There was no plane tickets in her name, nothing to suggest that she had packed up and had decided just to leave her life. Because like I said, her car was sitting there in this shopping center parking lot. Her purse was there. They had found her debit card under her car. And so her family felt that she had been abducted. During the search of her home, they uncovered some things. They found lots of bottles of prescription drugs and sedatives. It became clear that it looked like Cindy was hoarding these drugs. They found over 20 bottles of pills, over 900 pills in total. So she definitely seemed to have a drug problem with her sedatives, her sleeping pills, her anti-anxiety medications. They also found a little kit in her house that contained a needle and a syringe and saline solution. So she obviously had a needle for some reason, injecting herself. Was that people were
Oh my God,
speculating as well?
is she doing this
Which
herself? All these things?
we'll get into that. There was also a
I know the
report of
answer.
yeah, Lisa knows this case a little, but there was also reports of someone calling the insurance company asking about Cindy's life insurance policy. They claimed that they were Cindy's father, but he denied ever making that call. Of course, this caller was never identified. Nothing was ever released to some random person, but, it's just like, "Who are you? Why are you calling?" And nobody ever found out. So on June 8th, this is 2 weeks after Cindy disappeared, about 1.5 kilometers away from where her car was found, a municipal worker came across a woman in a pink blouse lying on the ground behind an abandoned house. He thought that there's just somebody sleeping on the ground at first, but when he got closer, he quickly realized that this person was dead. The woman had blonde hair and decomposition was evident. She had her wrists and ankles tied behind her like a hog tie style, and around her throat was a black nylon stocking, and they did confirm that the body was Cindy. And it was obvious that she had been there for probably the whole 2 weeks that she had been missing. People living in the
It's
area,
just
of
like
course.
the smell, like, phew, how can they just can smell it until then? It's just
Wait,
it
where
just
was the
must
body
smell
found again?
god awful.
It was found in a yard of an abandoned house. And yeah, it's weird because I guess like this house, like teenagers would go there to like hang out, and there was, I guess, someone like a homeless person lived in the round in that area, and he would like cook his food, like make his food on a fire just like 2 meters away from where they had found her body. But he said he didn't see anything. He never noticed she was there. So yeah, I don't know why it didn't smell horrific and why you wouldn't notice. But yeah, they didn't find her until this municipal worker, who I guess happened to have to go to the bathroom and decided to go pee in the lawn of this abandoned house, stumbled across her.
But was she,
Um,
like, hidden? Like, how would the homeless person not see the body in the yard when they're in the yard? Like, was it in, like, a ditch of some sort, in a hole of some sort? Like, it's
I don't
weird that it
know.
would just be sitting
Yeah. All
next
I
to
know is
you.
that
It's
she's
weird.
like, I mean, this person that was just walking into the yard to find a place to go to the bathroom saw her. She had a pink blouse on, like a bright pink blouse. I don't know. I don't know.
I
It's
can't
weird.
remember um, if it was, like, in a it was close to other, because I know in Richmond, like, the houses are literally right next to each other. So, was there no it wasn't in an area where there wasn't many people around. I just feel like maybe a neighbor would have spotted
It
something,
could
I
have been one of those
feel.
ones where there's like, I don't know,
A
there could have been
high
like a
fence or
fence
something.
fence around the whole property.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can't see it unless you're in the yard kind of thing.
People in Richmond love the fences.
Yep, they really do. Um, so yeah, it's just strange that it took 2 weeks for people in the neighborhood to find her. And it wasn't even like a resident, it was just someone working. So, just very strange. And, people who lived in the area, like, reported that they didn't see or notice anything out of the ordinary within the 2 weeks that Sydney had missing. Like, they never saw a struggle, they never heard anyone, like, getting dumped in a yard, someone getting strangled and killed. No one heard or saw anything. There was no evidence that Cindy had ever gone into that abandoned house, which I said was became like a hangout for local teenagers. She had blood on her blouse, but there was no injuries to her skin underneath, so it was like blood that had been transferred from somewhere else. An autopsy revealed that she actually did not die of strangulation, and the toxicology test revealed that she had 8 different types of drugs in her system, including diazepams and morphine, and her cause of death was determined to be a drug overdose. At that time, her manner of death was ruled a suicide. Even though she had she was hogtied, like her ankles and her hands were tied behind her. She had this nylon wrapped around her neck. Um,
Yeah, you can't hog tie yourself, can you?
yeah. I mean,
No.
her family was like, "What the hell? Like, there's no way that she would do that. There's no way she could do that." And they were determined to like get to the bottom of this. There was over 100 reports to the police within the past 7 years that Cindy had filed of harassment and letters and phone calls and hospitalizations. Despite all that, they still ruled it a suicide. And there had actually been 3 different fires at Cindy's house that had been reported, and multiple cats had been found on her property over the years dead. But yeah, in the end, they were like, "Yeah, this is a suicide." As time went on, people started to think, like you had alluded to earlier, AJ, that Cindy may have been behind all of this. Like what was happening to her, like was of her own doing, which seems like a little bit crazy to me. Maybe like, even if it was her, I feel like there definitely had to have been somebody on the outside, maybe at the same time, like a coincidence, doing the same thing, because there was calls like that Pat McBride had heard a random call that she had gotten while Cindy was with him in the house. So if that's true, obviously somebody else had called her. Um, And some of the things that made the police and people think that Cindy was doing this to herself is because only Cindy's fingerprints were ever found on the letters and notes. Only her fingerprints were ever found inside her car, inside her house, inside any of the crime scenes, was always just her. There was no witnesses ever, despite hundreds of incidences. People, like I said, had like seen people lurking around, but you could never actually tie them to an incident. Like, there just happened to be a person there, don't know who it was, so it could have been coincidence. Some of the letters I guess they had found, they did find like partial handwriting matches to Cindy on some of the notes that she claimed that had been given to her. They seem to conclude that a lot of the attacks happened to coincide with personal stressors. So whenever there was a time in her life that something was outside was happening that stressed Cindy out more than usual, that's when something would happen. There would be an attack when she was stressed out the most, which was was very coincidental. And RCMP experts stated that those knots that had been tied behind like Cindy's hands and feet, while very difficult to do on your own, they could have been tied by Cindy herself. And they opened up like an inquest about Cindy's death because her family insisted that there's no way this was a suicide. And so there was court proceedings, there was a jury, because they had to decide whether they thought this was a homicide, whether they thought it was a suicide, or whether they thought it was an accident where maybe Cindy had staged it again and then had died in the process but didn't actually mean to die. And so that was the decision a jury had to make. So it just seems like a very like unique situation where there's nobody on trial. It's just like, let's just figure out what happened here. Police and other people came forward to testify in this court hearing. One officer who testified about the first attack where Cindy was found at the bottom of those basement stairs, he said that there were some discrepancies in Cindy's story. So like I said, she said that she tried to turn the light on in the garage and it didn't work. So she was just kind of standing there in the dark. But when he went to go check that out, he said that the light was actually working perfectly fine. He turned it on and off okay. And he said the boxes that she had said she was carrying into the garage were actually just neatly piled in a corner, not suggesting that she had been attacked and that the boxes got thrown all over the place. They were like neatly kind of just stored there and suggesting that maybe there wasn't actually a struggle. They only found blood, like a bloody thumbprint on one of the boxes, and there was actually blood in the bathroom all over the counter inside her house, even though Cindy never mentioned that there was an attack inside the house or in her bathroom. After Cindy was questioned about this, she did confess that there was an attack inside her house, and she actually agreed to take a polygraph about that night. When she was asked if she staged the attacks herself and tied the black nylon around her own neck, she said no, but the polygraph determined that she had been deceptive. She took another polygraph, kind of a follow-up to this, and it was the same outcome, that she was being deceptive. And it was pointed out that Cindy was very nervous and she was like emotional and would break down whenever she had to kind of recount these events that night. And so people speculate that this could have been a factor in those results. She was already emotional, distraught, anxious, and so just the results were skewed because of how she just was feeling. And yeah, and when she was pressed further about this, she did say that, like I said, the attack did start inside her house and not in the garage like she had first claimed. I don't know why she would not share that little detail, but I guess it's like, why is this person in her house to start with? And why wouldn't she mention that? And if he was in her house, she could have got a better look because it wasn't a dark garage. Anyway, these are the kind of things that like were raising flags all along to police right from the very beginning, that something just maybe wasn't right about this whole situation. And also on the night that Ozzy had found Cindy on the floor with that knife through her hand, the investigator testified that it looked like an attempt that someone had cleaned up some blood and that Cindy's door was actually locked and Ozzy had to break it down when he got in there. They thought that this was strange because who would go through all that effort to attack Cindy and then try and clean up and then lock the door and just quietly leave? They thought that was, inconsistent with an urgent attack kind of thing. And on the night of one of the fires, police noticed that there was no signs of forced entry. The basement window that could have been the only way that someone could have got in without forcing their way in was super dusty. Like the sill was full of dust and cobwebs, and that was undisturbed when they went to look at it. And so it was very unlikely that someone could have come and gone out that window without disturbing it. Someone had suggested that someone could have like lit some paper on fire and threw it in the house. through that window, and that's how the fire started, but investigators determined that the fire was lit in 6 different places inside the house, and it couldn't have been started from paper that was thrown in through the window. And a female officer that questioned Cindy after that fire said that it seemed like Cindy was just acting and she was not being truthful about how the fire started. She suspected that Cindy had started the fire herself, even though Cindy would never admit it. And so this police officer kind of was getting that vibe from Cindy that she wasn't being honest at all about what was happening and just pretending that these things were happening to her. And so that night that Tom and Agnes had stayed at her house when there was a fire, police recall that even though it had started in the middle of the night, they noticed that Cindy's bed appeared to have not been slept in, and they concluded that she must not have gone to bed at all that night. And so they thought she was probably up and had started the fire herself. The fire that night started on a bookshelf or a shelf that contained all the memories of her and Roy's marriage, and so they thought this was a sign that it was Cindy that had started it to kind of, like, just as, like, a symbol to destroy all of that. Roy doesn't agree with this because he said once he got outside that night, he did see, like, a strange man kind of running down the street afterwards. This could have been anybody, someone that saw the fire and was running home to call police or something. Of course, they never identified who this guy was. Nobody got a good look at him. Was he really there? And so, yeah, like I was saying, authorities come to the conclusion that Cindy has fabricated this entire thing. They think she's fabricated the harassment. She's done the notes herself. She's attacked herself. She's hurt herself. She's tied herself up. And of course, her family feels like this is completely ridiculous. Like, there's no way that Cindy would or could do any of this to herself. So, one thing that I didn't mention during all this was that obviously, before her death, Cindy was put into a psychiatric hospital for a little bit, and while she was in there, she went under hypnosis because she was trying to remember the details of some of her attacks. And while she was under hypnosis, this memory that she had been suppressing was brought up that terrified her. She said she remembers one time that her and Roy were out on his boat, and she recalls taking a nap. And when she woke up, she found that Roy wasn't there. And when she goes looking for him, she hears a woman screaming in a nearby cabin. She goes in and she finds Roy in there with 2 dead bodies and with a weapon. He said that he had murdered them, and then later he proceeds to dismember them and get rid of the bodies. And he threatens Cindy that if she ever says anything about it, that he's obviously gonna hurt her too. Cindy did tell police this after her hypnotherapy session, and they, I guess, do take it seriously. They do try to find this cabin that she's talking about. They go to the same area, never able to find anything. Now, in court, Roy, of course, testifies. He says that this never happened. It's a lie. She's either manifesting things that didn't happen, she's lying about it, or, something's going on mentally where she's just kind of losing it. And apparently Cindy's sister was also there the day on the boat, and she doesn't recall any of this ever happening either. So, yeah, definitely something going on with Cindy mentally. Throughout all this, Cindy had admitted that Roy was sometimes violent towards her when they were married. She had said that he had pushed her down the stairs. He had given her black eyes multiple times. She claimed that, he was violent. And she also said that she needed reconstructive breast surgery after one of his very brutal attacks. And Roy denied all of this, and he said that she did have breast augmentation, but that was an elective surgery that she had decided to do because she wanted it for herself, and that's the reason why she did it, not because he had attacked her. In the beginning, Roy did believe that Cindy was being harassed by someone, but as time went on, he became more and more skeptical. There were just little things that kept adding up. Like, there was some incidences where she would actually ask him to throw away evidence. Like, I guess there was, like, some lamps that had been smashed outside on her walkway when they came home one time, and he said they should keep them to show the police, but she insisted that they get rid of the glass and throw it away before the police got there. That slashed pillow was another example. She had asked him to throw it away. Like, she insisted that he take it with him and throw it out. It's like, why? If you think someone's attacking you, why not keep that kind of thing? Also, Roy recalls that early on in the relationship, Cindy had read him a letter that he said that her mother had written to her, saying that she didn't think that Cindy should marry Roy. He just wasn't good for her. just all this stuff, like a very angry, nasty letter. And then when Roy told her that she needed to confront her mother about this, Cindy admitted that she actually had written the letter herself and just made that up. So, kind of very early on, you can see like this evidence of Cindy fabricating things to make herself, I don't know, look like a victim, make things worse than they actually are. So,
I wonder if Roy ever mentioned right away to the police that he suspected it was Cindy. I wonder if
yeah,
he
that's
ever
like a
mentioned.
good point. I didn't like that never came up where Roy was like, "Yeah, it's probably her doing it to herself because she's done this before." Um, I feel like it could have been like case closed right away, but that didn't that didn't happen. Roy, like so he like I said, he was a psychiatrist and he thought that Cindy had dissociative identity disorder, which is used to be multiple personality disorder. And of course, he states that her mental health was suffering and that her care from all the multiple doctors she had was inadequate. He thinks that the black nylons that were being used by Cindy to strangle herself was actually a symbol of sexual assault that she had endured during while she was a child. The recording on Roy's machine that we played at, was played at the inquest, and the police thought that it was Cindy James on those tapes. So they thought it was a woman, and the tapes were actually analyzed by professional voice linguistics who had samples of Cindy's voice during police interviews, and they concluded that there was obvious similarities between the voicemails and Cindy's known samples of her voice, but they couldn't be 100% certain just because she was obviously disguising her voice. It was a very short sample, so it could have been Cindy. The police thought it was. Cindy's family still thinks it's a male voice on those tapes. There's no way that they think it was Cindy. So, on the days leading up to Cindy's disappearance, witnesses say that she appeared to be in really good spirits. She was dressed really nicely. She had gone to get her makeup done. She was just very happy and bubbly, more so than she had been in a while. And police believe that this shift in her mood was because she had decided on a plan for her suicide, and she was just happy that her decision was finally like, she was finally gonna go through with it. She like, it was like a weight was lifted, she had this plan, she knew the end was coming, and she was just, like, finally happy about it. There was evidence that Cindy had purchased nylon stockings on the day of her disappearance, but they weren't found in the rest of the grocery items that were in her car. So they speculate that Cindy parked her car in that parking lot, she grabbed those nylons that she just bought, she took a bunch of pills, she made her way over to that abandoned house. They think that she took blood from her own arm via a needle because they did find a fresh needle mark, and that she used that to smear on the door of her car because, like I said, she was bleeding, there was blood, but there was no, like, new fresh cuts that she would have been bleeding from, but there was that needle mark. One strange thing, it was noted that that needle mark and a lot of the needle marks were on her right arm, and Cindy was right-handed, so she would have had to been doing that with her less dominant hand this whole time, which just would have been, like, inconvenient and difficult. And, like, did she think about that this whole time? Like, "Oh, I should do it with my less dominant hand to throw people off?" I don't know. That's just, like, another piece that came up. And then police say she went to the site, she hogtied her own hands and feet together, and then she lost consciousness and overdosed. So they believe this was a suicide. Like I said, some people speculated that they thought that this was just another a fabricated attack and that she didn't mean to die, but she overdosed, took too many pills or whatever, couldn't get out of the situation and died as a result. And like AJ said before, like it seems impossible that you can hog tie yourself like that, but during that inquest in court, they did have professionals testify that while it is, like, very difficult to do, it's not an impossible thing to tie yourself like that. And they said that the way she was tied, it was, like, loose enough where she could have possibly, like, slipped in and out of that. So she could have tied it and then put herself in that. Don't know exactly, but they're saying it's not impossible. Throughout the years, the doctors that had treated Cindy testified that they had diagnosed her with depression, anxiety, paranoid disorder, psychotic delusions, and suicidal ideations. And yeah, like I said, when Cindy was in that psychiatric hospital 3 years before her death, she did keep a journal, like she had been told so many times before, and she did write about suicide and how she thought that that would be just how it was gonna end for her. So, ultimately, after this trial into Cindy's death, the jury could not come up with a conclusion as to how Cindy died. Some thought it was suicide, but there was at least one vote that shifted the decision to undetermined. And so some people were thinking that there could have been another person involved, that Cindy, like, could have asked someone to help her stage these attacks. So it could have been her idea. It could have been self-inflicted with help from somebody. Nobody ever came forward, of course, saying that, yes, they attacked Cindy because Cindy asked them to. Others believe that if she did carry out these attacks on her own, that her mental state was so bad that she was not aware that she was doing it, and so that when she was questioned and she had interviews, her emotion and her fear was real because she didn't know that she was doing this to herself. She couldn't remember, and she actually, like, did have blackouts where she didn't know what happened, even though she was doing it to herself. That's how badly they feel like sh her mental state was, and so
Yeah, like if
ultimate
you have like that dissociative identity, like isn't that what that is? It's like you literally have different personalities and have no knowledge of your other
Yeah, you can,
ones.
like, separate yourself from a different personality and have no recollection.
Yeah, like you
So, I
snap
mean
out of it into your other one and you have no recollection of what you just did.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy. That's so scary to think that that's a real thing. So, ultimately, on May 25th, 1990, so this was exactly 1 year after her disappearance, the court determined that Cindy died of undetermined events and her file was closed, and that was the end. Her family, of course, still believes that Cindy didn't do all this to herself, that someone had killed her, um, and they're still searching for answers.
Crazy.
That's the
It's
end.
crazy.
It's still yeah,
So it's
determined
still a mystery.
undetermined, case closed. Like, why not? I don't know. I think they keep the case open and keep looking, but
Why
not
not
closed.
determine it? Isn't it not
Yeah, isn't
closed
that
until it's
strange?
determined?
Yeah.
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 She died
Yeah.
from an unknown
Yeah.
event. Done.
And we're just not going to even
Like,
try
Yeah.
thanks. Yeah, it's
to
crazy.
determine. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, what do you guys think? Like, I mean, it's one of those things
I
where I'm,
think
like, kind of on the border of I don't know what happened.
I think she did it to herself. I thought that from the very beginning when I first heard about this case.
I don't know.
It seems so extreme, like, to hurt yourself that way, like,
Yeah.
strangle yourself so hard that you can't even talk and, like, strangulation marks and the needle marks. Ugh.
I think either way, it's like extremely sad. Either she did it to herself and was that mentally unwell? I shouldn't even know she was doing it to herself and like the different personalities, if that's the case, and like is tormenting herself and doesn't know. And so she's terrified, but she doesn't know it's her. Or it is actually someone who's tormenting her, which is also equally sad and terrifying. So I think ultimately it's just really, really sad.
Yeah, I
Oh,
kinda
just like
lean towards self-infliction because, like, there was no evidence ever found of anybody else. Like, you'd think there'd be a fingerprint or, like, a hair or something left behind, but nothing. So that makes me think, like, she actually didn't have an accomplice helping her because they still didn't find anything, right? So, just seems like so much to do to yourself, though.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like out of all the times of all the different attacks, there would have had to have been something from someone else. One fingerprint, something along the way. If somebody's gonna do that many things, you think at least one time they would screw up and leave something behind. The fact that there was never anyone ever that they could ever determine is really weird. And the whole, like, thing, like, the whole, like you described, I think the needle marks, like, the day like, her body was found, like, the needle mark and that she bought nylon, but it wasn't in the car with the other stuff. Like, to me, that's really, like, compelling for maybe she did it to herself, but then I really feel like it's impossible to hog tie yourself. I still think that's an impossible thing to do, but I'm not an expert, I guess. Like, those experts said you could. I guess it'd be impossible for me, I guess. Maybe certain
Yeah.
people can do that, but
Well,
I
I
would
think they
never
were
be able
saying,
to.
like, you could tie the knot yourself, like, just right here in front of you and it's loose enough that you could just, like, slip it on that way. Like, that's what they said, like, that's how loose it was, which is still very weird. Um, but yeah, but the fact that she had, like, that many drugs in her system and she overdosed makes me think, like, it was intentional because she was a nurse. She obviously knew the dose that was safe, but I guess if you're
Yeah.
that anxious, that, mentally unwell, maybe not thinking about that. I don't know.
I'm just wondering about, like, the phone call that she received when that weird police guy was still living with her. Like did he actually see her, like, I don't know, did he actually see her take the call, or was she upstairs and the phone happened to ring? It was her, but he didn't know. And, like, he
Yeah.
left a message was left. It was really her upstairs leaving the
But
message.
you also couldn't call yourself back then. Like, you wouldn't have a separate phone number for, like, a cell
Yeah,
phone, you
so
call your landline, like, it would just be one landline.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe it's a
So
coincidence, maybe it was a butt dial, somebody at the airport, but you couldn't butt dial back then, like, you didn't have a cell phone in your pocket.
yeah.
So, it wasn't that either. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know. It could have been I feel like it was a coincidence. Somebody at the airport called her, but didn't mean to? I don't know. It seems weird.
Yeah.
like, maybe there was a period of time when she was actually getting not stalked to that level, but maybe she was getting weird calls, like, that
Mhm.
was completely separate, and, like, in her mental state, she, like, exacerbated it, and, like, then it turned into this whole thing, and then she became more I don't know, and then,
And
like,
it's just
so
like
that person happened to witness the time when it was actually
Yeah, when it
real.
was actually real.
yeah,
Yeah.
and, like, this was mentioned when I and then when things I read and stuff, like, it's it only like, when people would watch the house and stuff, that's when it would seem to stop, and then whenever they stopped, like, whoever was doing the calls or attack, like, knew when she wasn't being watched or whatever, and it's like, who would know that other than her and the police, you know? So if it was her, it makes sense if it was her. I thought some people thought maybe it was someone in the police force that was doing it because they knew exactly what was going
Yeah.
on with surveillance-wise, but she would also know that better than anyone too, right? So and also, like, not staying on the phone long enough to trace, like, the police would know that, and also the police would probably tell her about that, so she would know that when she made the calls, you know? Like, how long to stay on the phone for and stuff. Like
But
like
I also think if she was, doing it to herself and didn't know or whatever, like, what about that 6-month period when she moved away and nothing happened and everything was all good?
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. Like, why if it was her doing it, obviously she could have been doing it there too. But maybe 'cause you're just I don't know, there's just like a lull.
I
Maybe her
feel like
mind was at ease a little bit and just that didn't come out. I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like she knew she was doing it to herself. I don't think she didn't have no idea. I do think she was mentally ill. I feel like she knew exactly. I feel like she knew it was her that was doing it. A lot of people thought maybe she wanted the sympathy, she wanted the attention, she wanted to be the victim always. That's just a thought. But I don't believe that she had no idea she wasn't doing it.
I don't know, I feel like if I don't know why I just think if it was her, I think it was maybe she didn't know she was doing it, or she had that diagnosis. But I mean, I guess it's possible that you would know, but I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, it's crazy. And yeah, I don't
I just
know.
don't think you go that far. Like, why would you do that to yourself knowingly and you, like, tie a nylon around your neck so deeply that they can't even see it when they come in? Like, why would you do that?
Yeah,
Why would you knowingly do that? Like, that's pretty extreme. I
she
mean,
had a lot of
unless
faith that she wasn't gonna die. That wasn't gonna kill her. I mean, or maybe
Yeah,
she wanted to die those times and it didn't.
yeah, maybe these attempts she tried to each these times, it just didn't work, and then finally, to make sure that it happened, she took that overdose of drugs the last time. I don't know.
I wonder about, like, what was like, did you think, like, she wanted people to think someone had killed her? Or, like, did you want us like, I wonder, like, did you have someone in mind that she wanted to, like, I don't know. I don't know. But
Yeah, because she wasn't really
the way she
framing
did it
anyone, right? Like, she pointed at Roy, but
yeah,
she wasn't really, like, planting evidence or anything to make
yeah,
sure they thought it
and,
was
like,
him.
how tying herself and stuff, it makes it seem like she wanted people to think she was murdered. Um, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it's just very weird.
And so I guess you think that she made that call herself? Like the voicemail? The creepy one that we listened to?
I think that's her.
I do. I definitely feel like it's a female, so I feel like it is her. That's what as soon as I heard it, I'm like, "That's Cindy." Even though I've never heard her voice, but
Really?
yeah, I
Yeah,
did.
yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't even
I
think it was a woman when I first heard it. I just
I
thought, I
picture her
mean,
Mhm.
voice like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
crazy.
that's so creepy, yeah. But either way, I mean, I feel really bad because because like you said, her family's adamant that it wasn't her that there's someone, there's still someone out there who was doing this to her and got away with it. So I'd feel bad if I'm like 100% I think she did it to herself, whatever. Like, I don't know, I'm on the fence. It could be someone who's just really good at leaving no evidence and is just a creepy loser doing this. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it could also be both. Someone could be, like, stalking and harassing her, but then she could have been the one attacking herself, or the other way around, like, someone could be attacking her, but she was, harassing herself. That seems unlikely, but it's also weird that, like, she didn't shift into that attack mode while there's other people around. Like, no one ever saw her do it to herself, obviously. Like, she was aware enough to not do it when other people were there.
Like if it was uncontrollable, like if it was her, she had multiple personalities, like she wouldn't have control over that necessarily. Like when she switches
Yeah,
and it just happened to be when no one was around.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. But I feel very bad because I feel obviously like she obviously had mental health issues either way, I think. Um,
Yeah, for sure. She
I
had,
don't
like, a
know.
lot of
And maybe
trauma
this
growing
drove her
up and
crazy though. Yeah, a lot of trauma.
yeah.
But like I think even if maybe if it was someone else drove her insane, the torment over that many
Yeah,
years.
yeah, like you said, maybe it did start out as somebody else, and then it just, like, kind of drove her over the edge, and she continued on, took it over the top. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
And also that suppressed memory of Roy who like
yeah, that
dismembered people.
I know. I'm
That's
like, did
weird.
she make that up completely, or did she actually think it happened? And, like, it's like, that's another mystery, like, nobody knows if that was total just, like, her saying random stuff, or she actually believed it and thought it was a
And
real
then
memory.
her sister and then her sister being like, "I like, doesn't remember it. It didn't."
Yeah, her
Like,
sister was there, but
yeah.
said that never happened, so, yeah, I don't know. But
Like, why would
yeah,
the sister cover up for Roy if it did happen, you know?
yeah,
I don't know.
exactly. It
It's
seems like an
weird.
extreme thing to happen, and then just, like, forget about it and not say anything. And for him to, like, do that once and never I don't know. It's crazy.
And was there ever, like, a report of 2 women, like, other 2 people went missing from that cabin at that around that time? Like,
No, and
did
the
they ever
police could
look
never
into that?
find a cabin. Like, I think it was yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was, like, Vancouver Island or something like that, like, then that area where they had their
Mm,
boat, but they could never
mm,
find anything that matched that description or yeah, so
yeah.
it's crazy.
So I doubt it happened then. I mean, it happened in that way because I feel like there would be someone would be looking for those 2 people if there was 2.
Yeah, was there
But
ever
she did
any,
that
like,
under
evidence of that at that
she did
time?
that
Like,
under
no.
hypnosis, right? Like she
Yeah,
said this under hypnosis.
yeah.
So I feel
Mhm.
like if you're under hypnosis, like are you lying under hypnosis? Like I feel most times people are just like saying
I
like
don't
they're
I don't
not
know if I
under
believe in
control of
hypnosis,
their own.
Shannon.
That's what I mean, like, was she actually
Yeah.
hypnotized? Was she
Yeah.
pretending and,
Right.
like, said this? Or,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
or was she, like,
Like, that was
slightly
that was her
under the I don't know. I don't know.
like, that was her in. That was her that she that was her in to point to Roy, like, it
Yeah,
was the
throw him under the
plan, like,
bus.
now the next step, yeah, is she's gonna say that she had this memory that was repressed.
But it's also also such an extreme thing, like, it's not related to what's happening to her. It's something else that happened not related. Like, wha if she wanted to, like, frame him, why not say, "Oh, I remember him being there that night, and, like, he said this and, like, took this." Like, you know what I mean? "He came over to my house, we
Yeah.
talked, and then he attacked me." Like, that's not what she said. It
What
was,
a
like, this
wild
extreme event.
yeah.
And, like, don't
What a
make up a
wild
memory where
story to
this
say.
don't make up a memory where there's another person there that could be like that wasn't true.
Yeah,
Like, make it
exactly.
a memory where it's just you and him.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
That's
why I believe it.
yeah, yeah, that's why I
Because why
believe that
would you
maybe
make
she
that
actually
up?
believed what was happening to her and didn't know it was her that was doing it. It's a possibility, for sure.
It's one of those ones where it's like just when you think you're convinced one way, there's like something that like proves the opposite or doesn't prove it, but goes towards the opposite
Yeah.
theory. So I don't know. That's really that's crazy.
Yeah, it's a
What
weird
a
one.
weird
It's
what a
so
wild
weird.
turn of events. I wasn't sure where this was going. Like early on, I'm like, Roy. And then I was like, no, definitely that police officer that moved
Yeah.
in with her randomly.
Yeah.
Like he's
I
up
know,
to no good.
I'm usually
But
so good at, like, predicting the craziest twists, but I didn't when I first heard about this episode, I didn't even think that.
I know,
'Cause
same. I was like, "Holy
it's such
frig."
extreme yeah, it's, like, such extreme things that she would do to herself that made it ho you wouldn't expect it was her.
I know, like,
yeah, it's really
putting
sad.
duct tape on your own mouth and, like, getting your own nose bloody, tying your arms up, needle marks, like, slash marks. It's crazy.
So she had needles, like, she had needles in her house that clean
Yeah.
needles that hadn't been used, so she was injecting herself.
Yeah, it's a
I
possibility
don't
for
know.
sure.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, and she
yeah,
was
I
like a
don't know.
nurse, right? So she would
Yeah.
know how to like do that. And
Mhm.
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Crazy.
weird. I don't know. I feel like I said, I think it's really, I don't know, it's super sad, well, creepy.
Mhm.
Like that
Yeah,
voicemail is gonna haunt me, I think.
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, can you imagine your mental state to, like, do that, but, like,
yeah, and
leave
then
a
you don't
voicemail like
know,
that? Yeah.
and you really truly think someone is out to get you, and it's just you.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
Mhm. It is.
Yeah, super creepy. So I guess it's an unsolved, right? They admitted it's unsolved,
Yeah,
undetermined,
it's undetermined event. That's how she died, and that's the
but it's
fucking
not
end.
like but it's not an open case either.
No, they closed it.
Unsolved, but we're not gonna try.
Yeah, I feel like the police are convinced that it was a suicide, and so, like, it's just undetermined, but, like, suicide's good enough for them. 'Cause it seems like it might be anyway, like, it does kinda seem like that, but I don't know. Yeah, it's one of those things that I don't think we're ever gonna know, like, there's no way to know because she's not here to tell us, and even if she was here, she probably doesn't know herself. So, crazy.
Wow, that's crazy. I'm gonna go down the rabbit hole on this one probably. Look it up later.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah, it's a very weird one.
Very weird. Oh, yeah,
But
I feel
maybe it was
bad.
somebody maybe she did have
I feel
a
bad for her
stalker.
either
Yeah,
way.
I know. I
Oh, yeah,
do.
for sure.
Like either she like if either she did know like if she did know she was doing it to herself, like imagine being so like clearly she had mental health issue. Like what's that like Munchausen where you hurt yourself
Yeah,
for
Yeah.
attention. But like that's a mental illness.
yeah.
So imagine being like so mentally ill that you're doing that to yourself to that extreme.
Yeah, like, imagine
Mhm.
you drove yourself to this craziness, and you had no idea it was you that was making you go
Yeah.
insane.
Well, yeah, and
Yeah.
it probably, like she thought something was happening. Nobody believed her, but she knew something was happening, but it was actually her, so there's no
Yeah.
proof it was anybody. Everyone's like, "You're making it up," and yeah.
I wonder if the cops ever had sat her down and said, we think it's you," and what she would have
Yeah.
done. Maybe she
That
would have, like mm, yeah, I don't know if they ever said that to her, that they think it's from
I
the
know.
sounds of it, they didn't
Well, and all the
mention that to you at
podcasts
all.
I don't know if the cops would ever say that to you though. Like if they suspect it might be you, but I don't think they would ever tell you that.
well, I mean, that polygraph test, they asked her if it was her. "Did you do this to yourself?" And she said no, but they found out she was lying. But then, like, yeah, I guess, yeah, I don't know. So they obviously questioned her about that,
Mhm.
right? And she refused to
Yeah.
believe it, didn't believe it because it was, whatever personality, she wouldn't have known. So,
Yeah.
but she was deceptive. Yeah, 'cause she was deceptive, even though I don't know. I don't know. It's just
So
weird.
I mean she'd know
Yeah.
like she does know that if you're being deceptive, it's like you know that you're lying.
Yeah, like you're
Like
actually
it
well,
wouldn't come up deceptive if you actually believe you're telling the truth.
mm-mm.
But maybe it would if you're like, I don't know. That's weird. Also,
And then she
polygraphs
went
aren't accurate anyway, though. So
Yeah, you
yeah.
can't rely on
Mm,
that. So,
yeah. Wow.
very weird,
And then
crazy.
she went to Germany and nothing happened there.
hmm
I wonder if she thought to herself, like, I don't know. I wanna know what she was like, I just wish I knew her thought process, like, when she went away to Germany and there was no calls at all. Well, she didn't have a cell phone maybe, but if it was her doing it to herself, did she just stop doing it to herself for those
That's
and
what I mean. Yeah,
how long was she in Germany for again?
I don't
Like,
know.
a month?
I don't know. She was off for 6 months, like a sick leave, but I don't think she was in
Oh,
Germany that whole time. I'm not sure how long she
okay.
was there.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, weird, sad, and weird. And we'll probably never know. So
Yep, it's another one where we'll just never know. Crazy.
because it could get even if it was someone doing it to her, that person's got to be like 80 years old by now, 85
Yep,
years
because this
old or
happened a while
more.
ago. Yeah, so everyone involved
Yeah,
is, yeah, gonna be gone soon. So
yeah, sad. So that does it for this week's episode. We hope you enjoyed listening to us discuss the Cindy James case. You can follow us on all the social medias. So just Crime Family Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. You can also email us, crimefamilypodcast@gmail.com, if you have any case suggestions or feedback on this case, theories, or you just want to, you know, tell us what you think of the podcast. That does it for this week. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode and case. And until then, take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.